Welcome to Hochoka Podcast.
Lydia Whirlwind Soldier writes in her poem, "To be an elder, nope, I'm not ready to give up my immature ways to spontaneously give. I'm not ready to examine and prune my behaviors, to ask for those senior discounts, to set examples for those around, or let those old patterns vanish." Hello, Mitakuyepi. Welcome to Hochoka, here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian Schools campus. I'm Scott Wooster, your Hochoka host, and today we're joined by Lydia Whirlwind Soldier, a special guest on Hochoka this season, who has been sharing her poetry with us. Also joining us, frequent guest and contributor Joseph Marshall III, who needs little introduction here about who he is. So welcome, Lydia. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting us. It's a good time to talk about being an elder.
And welcome, Joseph.
Thank you. It's good to be here with both of you.
Absolutely. When I first invited Lydia to be with us and break open her poetry and do some reading for us, it didn't take a whole lot to put two and two together and decide that it would be kind of fun to have the two of you together here in the studio. We want to make this a chance for our listeners to kind of place themselves in the firelight or campfire light as two Lakota elders, kind of talk about what it was like to grow up in Lakota culture during the times you did, and learning from elders, carrying culture, language, and tradition forward. Let's begin with a question that we had that was prompted by your poem. How is it you find yourselves to be Lakota elders? And I'll let you start, Lydia. How do you find yourself to become an elder?
I think this is a very good time to start preserving what we know, because the younger generations have really lost a lot because of the elders not teaching them, hoping to protect them and to make it easier for them. You know, the assimilation process.
Right.
So it's a good time to talk about it, to preserve some of the things that we have left.
Yep, and you make a good point. I think you talked a little bit about that. Your parents wanted you to learn Lakota culture, but they also wanted to make sure that you were able to survive and assimilate in this culture as well. That's something that you referred to, and I think that through generation and generation, as that's happened, so much of it has been lost. Is that kind of what you're talking to?
Yeah, I think, nowadays, I think the kids are kind of mixed up. There's the gang culture on the reservation, and they don't know the difference between Lakota culture and gang culture. So, I'm glad the schools are teaching our history and teaching our language.
Finally, it's good to have some of that coming back, and it needs to continue. Joseph, I'll ask you the same question. How did you find yourself to be a Lakota elder?
Well, I mean, it's a good question in a sense that chronologically, I guess I've hit whatever benchmark there is. As far as knowledge and wisdom, I don't know. I mean, who's to say? I mean, nobody waved a magic wand.
Right.
Nobody said, "Thou art now an elder." Earlier, Lydia said some people don't deserve to be elders, and that's true. I mean, you have to be someone who knows something, and is humble about it, and is willing to teach it, whatever it is. Whether it's language or history or values or whatever it is that we have to offer. For me, it's a question of whether or not I'm that kind of a person. Obviously, I'm a writer. I talk a lot through the writing. Whether or not that, in the strictest sense, makes me an elder, I don't know. That's for the world to judge, not for me. But I have reached that point chronologically in my life where I can look back on a lot more years than I can look ahead.
Right.
So I guess
Right.
that's one benchmark.
Yep. So you look at the age, and of course that
Sure.
that just makes sense. I think you and I, we both have a hero that we've talked about quite a bit. Crazy Horse
Right.
is a hero, and one thing that you always talk about with Crazy Horse is his humility.
Right.
And as a leader, an elder would be a leader, right? I mean, I would think that just makes sense. Or an elder is supposed to lead.
Supposed to.
Yeah. And as a leader, that I think people want to follow a humble leader, and so that's a big part of it too. You don't get to decide who follows you, just as Crazy Horse didn't get to decide who was going to follow him either. If they did, they did, and that makes a good point too. So You both are at that chronological age where it makes a lot of sense, and with the works that you've done, personally, I consider you to be leaders, so we wouldn't have you on the program if you weren't. And then it becomes up to somebody whether or not they're going to follow that as well.
Right.
So we made a point that the kids now are a product of what's been done for the past 140, 150 years, and longer than that. But we'll talk about kind of the forced assimilation pieces that began, let's say, in the mid 1800s, and the result of that, with everything that was taken away. Where does that leave us standing now? Where does that leave the culture standing now? Are you as Lakota people better off or worse off for the changes? And that's a broad question. I'll let you answer it in your way.
Okay. I think that right now we're at a crossroads. We're losing our language. Back in the 1980s, we did a survey on our reservation, and only 30% of our people spoke the language. And we've lost since then. A lot of our elders are gone and didn't teach a younger generation. But now people are online on the computer learning. And so we're trying to restore
Yep.
and preserve what we have left.
Yeah.
So, it's a good thing. And a lot of our children don't know our history. So we have to, and the schools are teaching that history. And so that's a good thing.
Right. I ask you the same question, Joseph. How do you see things?
Well, I think she's right. We're at a tipping point. We continue to lose more and more first language speakers, and so that pool of teachers gets smaller and smaller every generation.
Right.
That doesn't mean that there are people who are trying to learn, and because there are. As she pointed out, people are, starting to realize that unless we learn, it's going to be lost.
Yeah.
The same goes for history. And it's just stories. As a child in school, I never heard any of the stories that my grandparents were telling me at home. I got Little Red Riding Hood and Ring Around the Rosie
Right.
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But lucky for me, I was getting the same kind of teaching at home with old stories like she was from her folks and her grandfolks. But there wasn't enough of that happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the first things that colonizers do, conquerors do, is they indoctrinate the children. They go right at that younger generation and they eradicate. The first thing they take away is language. So that's exactly what happened. This has happened all over the world. Wherever the colonizers went, that's exactly what happened. It happened to us. So right now we are still in the throes of what happened after several generations. That doesn't mean we've suddenly come to life and realize unless we recover our culture, unless we recover our history, unless we recover our language, it's going to be gone. I think we've hit that point.
Right.
Where hopefully enough of us are coming to that realization and waking up so that we'll learn our history and learn our language, learn our own values, and learn our own culture.
Yeah.
So it doesn't become extinct. It's assimilated.
Yeah.
But assimilation and extinction are two different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you speak to the way that advancement in knowledge may help with the resurgence of culture and language? And I'm thinking of online courses. I'm thinking of in 1900 there was no university named after spotted tail. There were none of those things that were advancing this. Can that advancement catch up before some of these things go extinct?
I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah. I hope so too.
Yeah.
And so bets on the table. What do you, as elders, you've seen a lot, you have the wisdom that a lot of people don't. What's your bet? I mean, where do you see this headed? Are you hopeful? Are you very concerned, or both?
Well, we have to be hopeful. I mean, there's no getting around that, because if we lose the hope, then we lose the will to do anything about it. Whether it's learning a language, teaching our history, or going to a powwow or a Sundance, if we don't hope anymore, we're not going to do anything about it to recover it. So there's obviously an effort going on now on several fronts. We're using technology to help us recover any or all of that, which is a good thing, and it can be. We need to make better use of it, so that we can use it as a tool rather than see it as an enemy.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But along with that, it's not going to solve the whole problem.
Right.
Enough of the younger generations, and there's more than one younger generation, have to realize that unless they make the effort to learn the language, to learn the history, the culture is going to die out. And once they reach that realization, then that's when effort is going to follow hope and then and into action.
Yeah.
And more people will hopefully do all of that stuff, learn the language, learn the history, and so forth.
In my family, it's 3 generations, boarding school generations. And so it's going to take time, time for us to, because it isn't just language.
Right.
Our philosophy is entwined there. It's part of it. And our culture and our even our child rearing practices, we've lost those.
Right.
And because of the boarding school.
Right.
And we've learned abuse that we didn't have before in our families.
Right.
It was the way that I grew up at home. No World War I soldier ever raised a hand to me. All it took was a look and know that I should do better.
And you paid attention.
Exactly.
And or gentle talk.
Yep.
So that's, at home, I grew up in a real gentle environment. And then at school, it was completely different.
Yeah.
It's very abusive, and verbally, and physically, and mentally, emotionally.
Yeah.
So there were 2 completely different worlds
Yeah.
that I had to adjust to.
So language is important, but it's a bigger, far bigger issue than just relearning the language. It's about learning the ways. Can you speak to that, Joseph, about what that means to you?
Well, culture is a lot of things. language is the glimpse into the culture. Once you learn the language, you a whole different awareness comes to you because of the words that you know. But again, other than the language, there are the values that we live by. As she alluded to, there are, the way that Native children, Lakota children, were educated before reservations was a one-on-one mentoring system. It was very effective.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Some families still do, sort of,
Yeah.
but not to the extent that it used to be.
Yeah.
And it was a very effective system. It worked then. It can work now if we were allowed to do it.
Yeah.
But we need to try to get back to those ways that made us a very strong, very cohesive society and a very caring society. We took care of one another. Nobody went without. If we had the ability to help somebody, we did. We didn't say, "Well, too bad. They're poor. They don't have a job." None of that happened.
Right.
So we have to go back to those values that made us a very strong, very caring, compassionate society, and we're still not there.
Right.
We have to learn it first, learn it, and then put it into practice.
Yeah.
I was struck by a story that Lydia told years ago that I heard. That when she first went to boarding school, for some reason she was punished and she was stuck in a closet. She said the closet was dark and scary, and the only air she could get was to lay down at the bottom of the door and get air from the bottom of the door. And that speaks to how stubborn and strong she could be, and that we all need to be.
Yeah.
To even take what little air we can, a little at a time, in order to survive it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I think child rearing practices, there's really, I was talking to one of my friends. I said, I was punished because I didn't look the teacher in the eye when she was scolding me. And she grabbed me, hit me, and said, "Look at me when I'm talking to you."
Right.
And to us, we don't.
Right.
We glance, look, but if we stare at somebody, I'm challenging you.
Yeah.
You better look out because I'm challenging you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to us, that was, if I was staring at her, I would have been challenging her in my way, our culture.
Yep.
And I was trying to show her respect, and I was looking down. But for that, she beat me up.
I want to thank both of you for joining us here, and we will.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely.
This gives us an opportunity for people to understand better what happened to us and why we are like we are today.
Absolutely.
We have so much to relearn and so much to learn from white society, too.
And we'll get a chance to talk about that some more in our next episode. So thank you again. And thank you to our audience for joining us here at Ho-Chokeh at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School campus, where we talk about issues that are central to Native American education today. Till next time, stay centered.